Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our joint hearing for Committee on Water and Land and CPC Committee. We are in conference room 329 at the State Capitol. Today is February 2nd, 2024, and we are on our 2 p.m. agenda. My name is Mahina Poipoi. I'm the Vice Chair for Committee Water Land. To my right is Chair of Water Land, Representative Linda Ichiyama. And thank you to CPC Chair and Vice Chair Reps Nakashima and Rep Sayama for allowing us to hold this meeting today. If you're testifying today, we'd appreciate if you try to keep your testimony to a couple minutes, after which we may ask you to summarize. And if you're testifying by Zoom, please turn your camera and microphone on only during the time you're testifying. For YouTube purposes, please do not use a copyrighted image or trademarked image if you're using a virtual background. Chat function should be used for tech assistance only. Okay, let's get started. We have one item on our agenda today, HB 2700, relating to wildfires. First is Blake Oshiro.
Good afternoon, Chair, Representatives. Blake Oshiro, Senior Advisor for the Governor. I'm here on HB number 2700 with some comments. Our office is not taking a position at this time in support or opposition, but we do recognize that this is addressing a very, very important and critical issue when it comes to the utility and our energy future. We are still in some discussions with the utility to see if we can make this to be a more viable option for us as we move forward. And so our bottom line is we encourage the committee, if it's willing, to continue this, to move it along, and we will engage in further discussions and keep you informed as some of those significant developments occur. I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have DCCA Insurance Division.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chairs, members of the committee. Gordon Ito testifying on behalf of DCCA. We offer just comments on. We just note that this proposed bill may fall within the definition of insurance, and if it does, it would be subject to provisions within the insurance code. If there's an intent to exempt it out, there's a provision within our code that you could put or create possible exemption from the definition of insurance. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise from DCCA Office of Administrative Hearings.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chairs, and committee members. My name is Denise Balanai. I'm the Senior Hearings Officer for the Office of Administrative Hearings at the DCCA. OAH stands on its written testimony, offering comments as to the appeals procedure of this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Utilities Commission, Chair Leo Asuncion.
Chairs, Vice Chairs, members of the committees, Leo Asuncion, Chair of the Public Utilities Commission. We'll stand on our written testimony providing comments, but we do want to highlight, should you want to move this bill forward, amendments that we have starting on the bottom of page 2 of our testimony throughout. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Budget and Finance. Okay, DCCA Division of Consumer Advocacy.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. My name is Mike Angelo. I'm the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs Division of Consumer Advocacy's Executive Director. We stand on our written comments, providing comments on the bill. We do believe it's an important bill that should go forward. We do have some concerns, notably around ratepayers of investor-owned utilities having to bear the cost of supporting this bill, and also regarding the risk, the wildfire mitigation plans, and the assumption of prudence. We don't support that. Thank you. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you. DCCA Nadine Ando.
Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chairs, members of both committees that are here. I'm Nidhi Nando. I'm the Director of the DCCA. And we stand on our written testimony really offering comments with regard to the bill. And particularly, I think our concern was with regard to the scope of something like this for purposes of anticipating future claims for property damage arising out of future catastrophic wildfires, while at the same time, I think we must deal in some regard with the current claims for property damage arising out of the Maui wildfires. And we believe a more comprehensive plan should be looked at in terms of moving forward with this legislation. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Tax Foundation of Hawaii on Zoom.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees. Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on our written comments and be available for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hawaiian Electric.
Aloha, Chair Ichiyama, Vice Chair Poipoi, Vice Chair Sayama, and members of the committees. My name is Jason Ben. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Hawaiian Electric Company, testifying in strong support for HB 2700 relating to future wildfires. HB 2700 is intended to protect both the people of Hawaii and our economy from the risk of another catastrophic wildfire occurring in the future. It does so by creating a wildfire relief fund that has two principal benefits. The first is it provides expedited compensation to property owners and insurers without the cost and uncertainty of litigation, regardless of cause. The rising risk of catastrophic wildfire in Hawaii is a whole of society problem with many contributing factors, including climate change, changing land use, human behavior, and other causes. When the cause or spread of a catastrophic wildfire cannot be attributed to a financially capable party, property owners have little to no recourse to recover their uninsured losses, and insurers have no recourse to recover their subrogated claims. This bill would address that problem. Secondly, HB 2700 helps mitigate the financial instability on key institutions, such as the state, counties, large landowners, and utilities that can result from litigation related to catastrophic wildfires. We believe the state has a strong interest in avoiding that outcome. Utilities, as an example, invest hundreds of millions of dollars to help achieve the state's energy policy objectives, including wildfire risk mitigation. In order to continue to be able to make those large upfront investments, these key institutions must address the financial uncertainty of future wildfire risk and regain access to capital. We believe this bill and investments Hawaiian Electric and others will make to mitigate wildfire risk will do so. In short, HB 2700 provides a low-cost, rapid process to compensate property owners and insurers and avoids the uncertainty of litigation that can financially destabilize utilities, large landowners, and government entities. Solving the impacts of climate change on our state must be addressed collectively and collaboratively. We appreciate the comments of other stakeholders, and we agree with many of the suggested amendments. We are committed to working with stakeholders to address their concerns. So on behalf of Hawaiian Electric and its employees who have faithfully served our community for 132 years, mahalo for allowing me to testify in support of this bill, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Kika Bukowski, IBEW 1260.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chairs, committee members. Kika Bukowski on behalf of IBEW 1260. We stand on a written testimony in support of this measure and on behalf of our members who are also employees of the utilities across the state. We ask that you respectfully ask that you pass this measure for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Sujimura, State Farm.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chairs, members of the committee. Matt Sujimura on behalf of State Farm. We'll stand on a written testimony in opposition. We just have some concerns that as drafted with certain provisions of the bill, in specific the opt-in, opt-out provisions, as well as the wildfire mitigation plan section. But happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. David Bissell, Kauai Island Utility Cooperative.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chairs, and committee members. I'm David Bissell from KIUC, and we stand on our written testimony but are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we have signed up to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none. Members, questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Representative Lowen.
I guess maybe consumer advocate. I guess just from your perspective, I mean, reading the bill, it seems like there's a new board or whatever it's referred to with unknown number of members, and we don't know who comprises the membership. And they're going to decide how much the utility contributes, and we don't know how much that is or what percent it is.
Correct. Yeah.
And that is being allowed to be rate-based, at least that initial contribution. And we don't have any idea really what the impact will be on people's electric bills. So it's just a big black box.
Agreed, yes. And we have concerns over that as well. I mean, both the funding aspect from ratepayers who are being asked to contribute to this, which is an ongoing future event. We should also be focused on preventative measures and addressing those, because the best is prevention. And ratepayers are going to be called on to pay for those. They're going to be called on to pay for the ongoing restoration costs, and now this is another cost, and we already have the highest rates in the country.
There's other bills related to securitization and
Right.
other
And that
measures that might be rate-based as well.
Correct, yes.
So what do you anticipate? I mean, at the Consumer Advocate, even though you're working with a bunch of blanks, we are all kind of anticipating there will be some impact to ratepayers because of the wildfires throughout the state, right? Not just on Maui. Do you have a range? How much are people's bills going to go up?
We don't have a range at the moment. We could estimate it, but it depends on how much gets pushed back onto ratepayers. So every time that something gets pushed back onto ratepayers, that's another bump up in the bill, which won't be insignificant. We're talking billions of dollars for each one of the things that I'm discussing.
Do you think that we should be more prescriptive in this measure and maybe determine via the legislature which entities paid in what percent of the contributions?
I think that's a more palatable approach, and that would allow a more measured analysis of what those impacts are to be able to address what the actual impacts are on ratepayers and customers at the end of the day.
And then do you think that this initial contribution, so the way I read it, it looks like the initial contribution can be rate-based, but any reimbursements made would not be rate-based, or is that not?
I believe it's both, I believe.
Both are rate-based?
Yes. Well, both were collected from ratepayers, yeah. The reimbursements are upon prudency review, yeah.
If they're found to be
If they're found to be
liable,
reliable,
basically.
yes.
Then they would have to pay it and they would rate base it if they're found to be liable?
Most likely, that would be I would assume that would be the request, but I would ask Hawaiian Electric, you could clarify that, yeah.
Do you think they should be allowed to rate base it?
No, we do not.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Rep. Ganadin?
To the Hawaiian Electric Company. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
This is a pretty lengthy bill, and I know your organization, as well as various members of the government, took a long time to craft it. I guess what I'm concerned about is the current process of the litigation, like the discovery that's happening. It's uncovering some potential issues with the way HECO has been doing business and with the way you folks assessed risk. What kind of assurances can you give to the state that things like managing down power lines won't happen again if we were to pass this bill forward?
So first of all, respectfully, issues with how I think the matter is still being, discovery still happening, the matter's still ongoing. So there's been no judgment that I know of that says we did anything or that we're liable. As far as assurances, I can assure you that Hawaiian Electric and its employees are some of the hardest working people around, and they're doing everything they can to make the system safe and to adjust to this reality. So we are working on interim measures to ensure that wildfire risks are mitigated in the short and the long term. And this package of bills, including this one, are part of how we can address that going forward and ensure that there's access to capital markets to make the right investments, among other things. Yeah.
Are you going to be asking that discovery be changed in litigation, or that the state sort of find HECO not liable and just move forward? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm not suggesting anything like that. I'm merely respectfully just saying that this is an ongoing matter. I'm not an attorney for the company. Right now, our focus has been on helping the community restore and recover from the events that happen, and also focused on what can we do together to prevent another tragedy from occurring. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Rep. Morikawa.
Thank you for Hawaiian Electric. My concern is about KIUC on Kauai. Here.
Hi.
Because we are, different.
Yeah.
And they are recommending some amendments.
Um,
I don't know if you know about them, but I'm wondering what you think about those.
Apologize,
Investor-owned.
Representative. I haven't had a chance to look at their amendments, but I think the insurance fund is designed to be statewide. And I really can't say enough. I think this is really a chance for us to demonstrate why we're different as Hawaii. This is a real whole of society problem. I think we see a lot of climate change impacts and changing land use, and I don't think Kauai is exempt from that. A lot of lands that were irrigated plantation lands are now fallow. We have more and more drought situations. The risk is going up. We look at this as a form of insurance for the utilities and for other entities, including landowners. And I'm aware of cases where landowners themselves outside of utilities have
I'm
been
okay with that. It's just that we're a cooperative versus you're investor-owned, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have a question for Hawaiian Electric.
Yes.
You talked about supporting amendments and hearing some of the concerns about the ratepayer issue. Would you be supportive of shifting that cost from the ratepayer to the shareholders?
So we're open to discussing with all the stakeholders any suggested amendments. I just want to clarify, whereas the initial contribution can be ratepayer borne, that is normally a function of rates to include our insurance. Our ability to reasonably access insurance in this environment is hampered. So that is fairly typically, and for utilities, their insurance is included in rates. Second of all, on the issue of reimbursement, if we are imprudent, we must reimburse the fund. So there is an accountability function built into the bill. The utility does not get to be, held unaccountable. So if we do something and we're found to be imprudent or the cause of it, we have to replenish the fund up to amount that balances the interests of the state. And part of the interest of the state is, can we have a financially viable utility that can make the right investments for renewable energy, decarbonization, making sure we can mitigate wildfires. Did I answer your question?
Kind of.
Okay, let me try again.
No, I understand what you're saying. I was
Yeah.
just hoping the answer was going to be yes.
We're open to talking to all the
Okay.
stakeholders about
Okay, yeah,
the
I think my
amendments.
concern is that I represent Molokai, highest
Yeah.
electric rates in the state, Hawaii, highest in the nation. So
Understood.
anything affecting increased cost to ratepayers,
Yeah.
I'm concerned about, but thank you.
Yeah,
Additional questions?
okay.
Yes, Representative Onishi.
Yes, Vice Chair, I want to ruling on a potential conflict of interest. I own Hawaiian Electric stock.
Yeah, no, I see no conflict given that it applies to the general population.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask thank you. I wanted to ask the advocate if he could please come up. Thank you for being here. I realize everybody's top of mind is the Maui wildfire and wildfires in general. Coming from Hawaii Island, though, are there other programs that address catastrophic events like lava flows, tsunamis, and a fund that's available to landowners or people that are affected that would, have the same kinds of options or opportunities?
To prevent from those threats, right? From
Well,
a
not
utility.
just this isn't prevention, this is like an insurance, right?
Insurance, yes, that's right.
I mean, it
Oh,
It
I see
doesn't
what you're-
deal
yeah.
with prevention.
Right. As it pertains to utilities, I don't believe there is a forward-looking fund for future catastrophic events to recover for property damage. This one's specific to property damage. Right?
Yeah, I mean, right? I mean, Hawaii Island's been hit by
Right,
all
by
of those catastrophic.
Hurricanes, yes. And that is a big focus and concern, and things that you've probably seen in my testimony is focusing on also on the front end, the preventative, making sure that we are resilient to threats. That needs to be something that is prioritized, because that's the best way to mitigate all these additional costs coming down the line. And that's something that the PUC has opened a non-docketed proceeding asking all regulated utilities within the state to file hazard mitigation plans, and that's something that we plan on, we will be reviewing with the PUC. And I think that is critical and something that we should really be focused on.
I wanted to also ask your opinion. This bill calls for private landowners of over 1,000 acres to participate, or to, I guess, have the option, right, to participate. Does that make sense to you, to set a limit on size of property? I mean, if I had 999 acres,
Right.
and a fire started on my property and affected other properties or other people, I wouldn't have any responsibility to have shared in the costs? I mean, or am I not covered by this, or how does that work?
I'll try to answer from a ratepayer perspective, because that's what our office is focused on. That's what our statutory responsibility is. I think that presumably, obviously, some of those people would be ratepayers, but I think addressing what a specific cutoff or threshold, I think what you're getting at, that's something that should be vetted out more in terms of stakeholder engagement within this bill. It's something that we'd need to think about how this flowed through to all parties. And our office's perspective is from the ratepayer side, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, and my final question for you
Sure.
is that, as a consumer advocate, right, and concerned about ratepayers and how much they would have to dish out, what about the government entities that are contributing? Does that contribution have an effect on your ratepayers also?
Yes, because it would go into the fund. My understanding of how the fund would work is everyone would pay into that, and then if there was an event, those dollars would then flow through to different entities who were impacted by the wildfire.
Oh, yeah,
In this case,
no,
for
I
property
meant-
damage.
But what I meant is that the state's contribution,
Yes.
doesn't that actually come from ratepayers? I mean, from the public,
It comes from taxpayers.
right? So, I mean, the ratepayers are taxpayers, right?
I don't
So it
entirely see
has
it
a
that way,
direct
but
effect, right?
it would impact someone who is a taxpayer.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Representative Lowen.
Thanks. Maybe for Hawaiian Electric first. Just the question that similarly to what I asked Consumer Advocate earlier, I mean, when you look at this bill and the securitization bill, and I think even your guys' version of the wildfire mitigation plan bill also included rate basing. that, although presumably it could still be rate-based even if it wasn't included in the bill. But have you done any calculations on the impact to the actual dollar amount? Like how much will people's electric bills go up if you get all you're asking for?
I think, Representative, respectfully, we haven't calculated that so much as we're trying to keep a lot of options open as to how these things can be financed and paid for. And ultimately, we think some of those options may be in rates and may not, and will be the lowest possible
Okay,
option.
but you have,
Short answer, we haven't calculated that yet, yeah. We don't know the
Not even a range.
damages.
I mean, I have a hard time believing there haven't been conversations about how much will this cost people,
Yeah.
your customers.
Well, I don't have a number I can give you right now. I apologize. I don't have a number I can give you.
And then you mentioned earlier, I mean, having a financially viable utility that's stable is important to everyone in the state.
Yes, ma'am.
But that kind of brings to mind another question, because as Rep. Morikawa was talking earlier about KIUC, I mean, isn't that option if you're a publicly owned, if you're a cooperatively owned utility, you have access to cheaper capital? So has that conversation arisen?
I'm not part of that conversation, but first of all, the utility would want to have to sell its assets and someone would want to have to buy it. And it's not necessarily the cheapest way to do it. They do have special financing options, but I'm not an expert in cooperatives.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And
Yeah.
can I ask Consumer Advocate some questions? So
Oh.
Consumer Advocate. A similar question. I mean, in terms of what is to the highest benefit of ratepayers, if you were looking at cooperative models, say for some, certain of the utilities under Hawaiian Electric's umbrella, I mean, that could solve some of the financing issues potentially, because you would have access to cheaper capital, which is a lot of what they're struggling with right now.
Yeah, as a cooperative, you would have access to cheaper capital because they would be funded by, there's different funding options, but they're primarily funded by RUS, similar to KIUC.
So, I mean, I know there's been a lot of conversations going on between the administration and Consumer Advocate and the commission and the utility. I mean, has this been discussed, and what are your thoughts on it?
We haven't discussed it at length. It has come up. Of course, there are certain benefits under a member-owned cooperative. There's less incentive for capitalization of spending. Their members are they're acting solely in the interest of their members, whereas in a utility case, they act in the interest of their customers as well as they have to consider shareholders. So from a sole perspective of prioritization, ratepayers would be prioritized more under, the utility would be incentivized to prioritize ratepayers more under a cooperative model.
Yeah, and then last question, just kind of back to what Rep. Onishi was getting at with the portion, the unknown quantities that we're asking state and private entities to also contribute to this fund, presumably because they may have liability at some point in the future, but also on the face of it right now, because this is all a reaction to the Maui wildfire. I mean, it could amount to being perceived as a bit like somewhat of a taxpayer, depending on what those amounts are, somewhat of a taxpayer bailout. And like you mentioned, taxpayers and ratepayers aren't always exactly the same group of people, but they're often a highly similar group of people. So wouldn't it make sense if we're asking for a taxpayer bailout of the utility that the taxpayers can also own the asset?
I think we'd have to think about that and involve a lot of stakeholder involvement because it's a complex question. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I do have a question for Director Ando. So in DCCA's many testimonies, I don't think I saw any written testimony in referencing potential administrative costs for DCCA to house this particular relief fund. Was there any conversations there?
I had looked at this bill indicating that this wildfire fund and corporation would be housed under DCCA, and did notice that towards the end of the bill, there was a provision for general funds with a blank for purposes of hiring an administrator. And although the money that would be inserted from general funds would be put with the fund, I guess for the initial year to start it up, DCCA would be responsible for expending those funds, presumably to help with getting an administrator on board. And I think there was something at the end of the bill that provided for an amount. So in terms of, I guess, administrative costs, that's kind of what I look for. Is there something that's going to help us get it started until it's off and running, and there was a provision with a blank?
Thank you.
Quick follow-up, sorry, Director. So do you know what that dollar amount might be to fill in that blank?
I don't know. It was kind of set forth the general funds in the amount of blank. But then there was a provision in there, I think, for one full-time administrator position, and I can't remember offhand what it was, but it was in maybe like 70,000 plus was the amount for the position, a full-time position, administrator position. So that's the only number that I saw was set forth. It's kind of towards the end of the bill when it talks about some funding.
If you could just take a second look at it and let us know if that's going to be sufficient to hire an administrator, and if you see any other administrative functions that need to be funded in order to implement this bill, and just provide that to the chairs of the committees. That would be really helpful.
We'll do that. We'll
Thank you.
follow up.
Thank you.
Rep. Ganadin?
To the PUC.
Afternoon, Rep.
You know, in the 4 years I've been here, I've never seen a bill like this. It's pretty complicated, and I apologize as I'm learning the vocabulary around this. I'm concerned about the welfare of everybody who uses electricity in the state should HECO go bankrupt. What would happen in that instance? Let's say litigation continues, and then the utility decides to declare bankruptcy. What does the PUC do, and how do we assure that people continue to get services?
Well, one of the items, as far as the PUC is concerned, we've been discussing, right, if that scenario plays out. And to my knowledge at this time, right, the assumption is that bankruptcy would happen in U.S. bankruptcy court, right? And then we would have to, file something with the bankruptcy court to make sure that we are a part of that proceeding. It's not necessarily that we're automatic, right? And the reason why is, right, the PUC does have the authority at the end of the day, of any successor entity or what's going to play out, right, should Hawaiian Electric not come out of bankruptcy, right? So if there's a change in ownership, if there's another entity that comes before us, right, the PUC has that under state law, right? We have the authority to, in a nutshell, make sure that the entity that's coming in is fit, willing, and able.
So bankruptcy is not like a one-stop shop, it's a process.
Yes.
Does the PUC step in the place of HECO employees? Should they be terminated and do their jobs, or how would that even work?
Yeah, that is, it all depends on what comes out, right? I think we don't have like any authority to like just take over, like as the state, right? To take over a utility, even if a utility went belly up and left tomorrow, right? We don't have that authority. In my mind, what might happen is, right, we would need to seek some operator, right, to help the state operate the utility.
So an interim operator, probably HECO itself, or members
Could
of
be HECO
so, like,
itself, it could be someone else, depending on, right, it's all speculation at this point.
And if that were to happen, then we'd have to come back maybe next legislative session and have a whole new conversation about the way we do utilities in the state?
I'm not sure about how you do utilities. I think, right, you would want to have that come in and then look at what you have on the books now, right? Because you're not going to, I would assume, not going to change, right, statute just because of who's coming in.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Okay, seeing none, we will recess for decision-making.
Good afternoon. We are reconvening our 2 p.m. agenda on the House Committee on Waterland and Consumer Protection and Commerce. Thank you again to CPC Committee for allowing us to have this hearing. We are reconvening for the purposes of decision-making on House Bill 2700. Recommendation is going to be to pass out with a House Draft 1. And I apologize in advance, there's a lot of amendments, so I'll try to go slowly. First, we are going to specifically clarify that this fund is not going to fall under the insurance code. We are going to adopt all of the Public Utilities Commission's proposed amendments in their testimony. We are going to insert language that the public utility cannot recover costs from ratepayers for participation or contribution in the fund. We're going to take DCCA's Office of Administrative Hearings amendments contained in their testimony. We're going to blank the acreage amount for large landowners participating in the fund as contained on page 14, line 17, to promote further discussion on that. We are going to do technical non-substantive amendments and then defect the date to the year 3000. I think this is a work in progress. It still has a long way to go, 2 more committees in front of us, and I understand that the parties are trying to work together to iron out some of, I think, the implementation questions for how this would work. So we would like to continue that discussion, but we also are going to note in the committee report the concerns that were raised in testimony, which I think are valid concerns. Okay. Waterland Committee members, any discussion? Rep. Ganyadan.
Chair, I'll be voting with reservations. I think there's a lot of really valid questions coming from various members that we're still going to have to work out through the rest of the legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Vice Chair, House Draft 1.
Okay, voting on HB 2700 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Chun, excused. Representative Ganyadan is with reservations. Oh. Okay, Representative Chun. Representative Hashem.
Aye.
Representative Mizuno.
Aye.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Takayama.
Aye.
Representative Souza. Excused. And noting Representative Ganyadan's reservations, motion is adopted.
Thank you very much, Waterland members.
Okay, thank you, Chair Ichiyama. With same amendments, Representative Onishi, oh, I'm sorry, before we vote, members, any comments? Representative Loy?
I just want to say I appreciate the amendments to not have the contributions or reimbursements be rate-based, but I think there are still a lot of open questions, a lot of blanks in this bill, and a lot that we don't know on how much would be asked and how much of which entity and who even will be making these decisions. And I think there's still not necessarily enough reassurance about how it will impact ratepayers and/or taxpayers. So I'm going to vote WR at this time.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, Representative Onishi for the vote.
House Bill 2700, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Representative or Chair Nakashima excused. Vice Chair Sayama.
Aye.
Representative Amato excused. Representative Belatti.
Aye.
Representative Hashem. Aye. Representative Hasiberdic excused. Representative Gates excused. Representative Loen.
Reservations.
Representative Onishi, aye. Representative Tam.
Aye.
Representative Puri.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're adjourned.